Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
And I'm shaking Gree.
Yes, hello.
Thank you to everyone who has sent us Gree. We love it all. Okay, are you ready for part 2?
I sure am.
When I left you in the last episode, if you're just starting here, this should
Go
be,
back.
Yeah, you've got to go back because you won't understand any of the people. Why do I keep saying players?
I don't know.
Sorry, that is just
I'm a player in my own life.
I've
said once before that we all walk through life as the stars of our own movie and everybody else are just cast members.
Mm-hmm.
So
they are.
There's no ill will or intention in what you're saying or
Not at all.
disrespect meant to our victims and or survivors.
Of course not. Of course not. Ever. That is never our intention on this podcast. But if you started with this episode, which I think is episode 243, just kick it back to episode 242 so that you can get the first part here. Because I left you in that episode in 2010 where our perpetrator, Matthew Hoffman, is obsessed with trees, is a little...
Squirrely.
It's a little squirrely. He likes to eat squirrels as well. He doesn't just have an obsession with them. He wants to become one with them. Okay, and I think maybe in his mind he has.
Okay.
All right. And he's working as a tree trimmer.
Yeah.
He is sitting in trees for hours watching his neighbors, but you should also know that he hates the world and everything in it except for trees.
Okay.
Especially squirrels and humans, but except for trees. He likes them. On the night of November 9th, 2010, Matthew Hoffman positioned himself in the woods across from the home of the people that we met in the first episode, Tina Herman, in Apple Valley, Mount Vernon, Ohio.
So is this where he's come to live, or did he just climb a tree here?
No, he lives in the vicinity.
Okay.
Okay. Not the same neighborhood, but in the area. Because remember, Tina's best friend, Stephanie, works for Matthew. I believe...
Like in the office of his tree trimming business, like she takes the phone calls and says, "Hey, Squirrely, you got to go over here and trim this box elder."
I couldn't hammer out those details. I am not sure because it was just mentioned that she did some work for him.
Okay.
In this area. Okay. So that is where the connection is, that this is Stephanie. Stephanie and Tina are neighbors. They live in the same neighborhood.
And they're besties.
And so Matthew Hoffman isn't, far away in that regard. But so he positioned himself in the woods across from the home of Tina, where she was living with her boyfriend, Greg, her daughter, Sarah, her son, Cody. And he parked his car about a mile away, but he stayed in the woods, which is something that he enjoys. Now, I think that this house was specifically targeted because it was the most isolated. Remember I mentioned that when Tina and Greg moved to Apple Valley in this really nice, lakefront neighborhood, they actually didn't live on the lakefront. They were more secluded.
In the woods.
Yep. And it had a really nice backyard and all of that stuff. So Matthew Hoffman set up his sleeping bag and he camped outside of the home all night.
It's creepy AF.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. As creepy as being up in trees for hours staring at people. Yep. And he waited until Sarah and Cody and had went off to school and there was no one in the,
presumably the house is empty.
Yes, presumably. Mm-hmm. Tina had actually left. She went out to go to the store. And at this point in time, Matthew Hoffman breaks into the house and he just sits and wait.
Why?
Now, Well, I like that you say that. Why? He claims at an eventual trial here that he only entered the house to rob it. But if that were true, why enter the home when it's empty and then wait?
Right. Get your shit and leave.
Exactly, because that's what happens in a robbery, right?
They attempt to leave without being caught.
They
don't wait around and have a fucking cup of coffee.
Nope. They do their robbing things and then they hightail it out of there, right? Now, here's the thing that I haven't told you about him.
Okay.
Besides his affinity for trees and all things tree-like, he also just enjoys roaming around people's homes without them ever knowing that he was in it.
So he has done this before.
Yes.
So he
enjoys
is
being
Goldilocksing.
Yes.
He is a tree hugging Goldilocks.
Yeah. He enjoys being amongst the living
without them
and
knowing.
all of their things without them knowing. And
this is why people need to lock their panty drawer.
Yes.
Because of people like this.
You know what's weird when you do like energy work and you can feel energy? You can tell when there's been other energies in your space.
Agreed.
Like I can't come into my home without knowing, like one of my kids came home when I wasn't here. Or I'll know if my son is in the basement, I'll know if he has friends here because I can literally feel their energy. You should all tap into your energetic spaces and your own energy because you'll recognize the energy of others much easier. But this is terrifying.
So it's a sixth sense too.
It
if
is.
you walk into your home and you just have a weird, an evil or a gut feeling and you're just like, oh, I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't smell right.
It's the sense that we never talk about. It's called clairsentience. We all have it. Start using it, people. They just don't teach you about it in school.
Right.
That gut
if people
feeling,
used that, horror movies wouldn't even exist because people would walk right back outside.
They would.
And the movie would be over.
Yep. The end.
The end. Everyone lived.
She used her clairsentience and she knew how to stay alive. The end. Yeah. So when Tina returned from the store, this is where we get into the murdery. Okay. So the first episode I spared you from.
Which he says was not his intention.
Right. Remember.
To murder.
He just wants to walk amongst their things, presumably, as you indicated, shuffle through the panty drawer, sniff some panties, and leave. But he never leaves.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that. And Tina had just went to the store.
And he's been watching them. We know he's been in that fucking tree watching them.
All night. Yes. He had a goddamn sleeping bag. Okay? He was camping out.
You can't change my mind. This guy was jerking off in the top of a tree.
Absolutely.
You can't.
Yes. Oh, the horror. The poor nature that had to see that.
Yeah. Well, I hope he has poison ivy right on his dick.
He wouldn't be the first male to have accomplished that.
No.
As soon as Tina returned home from the store, Matthew Hoffman attacked her. He dragged her into a bedroom, and he stabbed her several times with a hunting knife that did end up resulting in her death.
Okay.
What he did not predict, however, was that Tina had actually arranged for her best friend, Stephanie Sprague, to come meet her at her house that day.
Okay.
So Stephanie, who had no idea what was going on inside the house, enters the house and finds herself also brutally stabbed in the chest by Matthew Hoffman.
Okay.
And I don't know. Did he recognize her? Did he realize, oh my gosh, Stephanie's here and I know her? I don't think it mattered one way or
maybe
another.
After. I can see where homicidal maniacs who end up killing multiple people other than their intended victim don't realize who the identity of the other people are because they're in a zone. Mm-hmm. They're in a murdery zone.
I truly think that Stephanie had probably talked several times about her best friend Tina and their children and how their children all play together, and that is likely how he ended up targeting this family.
Agreed.
Because Tina and her children do not know this man. The only link is actually that Stephanie had done some work for him. So I think that's how they got in his awareness. Okay. All right. So now inside this home, we have 2 murdered adult women. And I'm sorry, guys. The family dog was in the house as well. Of course, tried to protect and was barking wildly. And he killed the dog as well. So he's the worst of the worst and deserves every pineapple up his ass.
He's killed 2 mamas and a dog.
And a dog. Mm-hmm. Yep. So he then dragged all 3 of those bodies to the bathtub. He dismembered them one by one and put the bodies in trash bags.
Fuck me, man. It got graphic quick. He didn't leave. He attempted to cover it up, or at least why take the bodies? There's evidence of blood and DNA and everything here where you've killed them. Was he going to try to clean up?
Have we had a psychotic break? I don't know. This is 0 to 60. We went from arson and robbing and just being amongst people's
a peeping
things.
Tom, a voyeur.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a voyeur. Yeah, no, and to dismembering. I mean, that's a serious leap.
How many murders statistically dismember on their first kill?
I was going to
this causes
pose
me concern.
That question as well. I agree. That is something that I thought of.
Other than he's somebody who's experienced with killing wildlife, hunting, which is I have no problem with, and butchering.
That. I hadn't considered that. So it would be a natural progression, right? It's just a different type of body. Okay, I hadn't considered that.
I call bullshit on my own statement, but still, I mean, I think that's a big leap.
Yeah, but I guess when you're in that that state of mind, it might not seem so different.
Okay,
especially because you got to remember one of these bodies was a dog.
Okay,
as well, 2 humans and the dog.
Well, in his murdery adventures, that first time, perhaps it was a moment of panic. I got to get rid of these, and dismemberment just came to his head because it's
the easiest,
bizarre
most
and crazy.
natural.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's what he's done with his animal kills.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay. Now we're going to get more graphic here and
trigger alert
to child stuff. Okay.
No,
because
the kids come home. Fuck.
They do, because think about how long it takes you to clean up a mess like this.
It would have been shorter for him to drag them out of the house and into the woods.
Yes, but that's not what he does. He's in the home.
He's enjoying it. He's enjoying being in this home.
He knows exactly who lives in this home. And it's almost like whether he lost track of time or what, but Cody and Sarah come home from school.
Fuck.
So as soon as they walk through the door, Matthew Hoffman springs on the children. He stabs Cody, who is 11 at this point in time, in the back of the head, killing him immediately.
Okay.
And he then, after he was deceased and clearly deceased, he continued to stab Cody many more times. He also did that with the other 2 victims, with Tina and Stephanie as well. So just to put you in a state of where he's at, psychotically speaking, we are at a break, okay? He then chased 13-year-old Sarah up into her room. He tied her up with a cord from the fan that was in her room, okay? After killing all of those members of her family and dismembering all of their bodies in the bathtub, Cody included, he gagged Sarah. He threw her in the back of Stephanie's Jeep.
Okay.
Right next to the trash bags that were containing
her mom, her brother, and
and her mom's best friend, Stephanie. Yes, and her family dog, right, as well. So Matthew Hoffman takes Stephanie Sprague's Jeep to his own car that he had parked a mile away, which was a Toyota Yaris, and he transferred Sarah into that car. He then drove back to his own home. He locked Sarah in a bathroom.
Why? Oh, I know why.
You know exactly why he kept
her.
the 13-year-old, and why this family was appealing to him to begin with. Remote location, right?
Yeah.
Teenage children. Okay. So then what he does is he drove her in the Toyota Yaris, right? Which essentially means he left
the dismembered body parts in a bag in the Jeep?
I believe he transferred them.
Oh, he brought those with him,
he brought those with him. But what he does is he locks Sarah in the bathroom in his home, and then he goes and he hides the trash bags with the bodies in it.
Okay.
We will get to where he hid those in a moment.
In the grass.
Afterward, obviously, he's very exhausted from his day of murder and mayhem and butchery. Okay. So he decides to take a nap. Not wanting Sarah to escape, He tied her to himself while he slept. Sarah looks around his house in absolute horror because she sees that his walls are lined with bags of leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Tree leaves, you guys. His floor is completely covered in leaves from trees as well.
What in the actual fuck?
He has made the inside of his home
A treehouse. A tree.
look like a tree. Bizarre. I mean, we obviously
How
know
terrified this poor little girl is.
exactly. She's tied to this man.
It's a
who's
horror
sleeping,
movie.
and she's just surrounded by trees. And also, I don't know if you guys have ever played in leaves before.
Yes.
But after a while, they don't smell good.
No, they're musty and
They
moldy.
are. They start to get mold. They start to
yeah.
decompose because they have fallen off the body of the tree and they are no longer receiving life
and
from
when
the
you
tree.
go outside momentarily in fall, that's actually not a terrible smell, although it does affect a lot of people's allergies. But to have it in a contained space inside of a home.
Mm-hmm. So eventually Matthew Hoffman wakes up. He goes back to Tina's house.
No.
Stole the family truck and planned to use it to retrieve gas cans that he would use to burn the home down.
Where's the boyfriend?
He is still at work at the distribution center. Remember, I told you he leaves at 3 a.m. or wakes up at 3 a.m, works an hour away.
I can't believe this fucker took the time to take a nap, though, instead of finishing this job off.
Because he's planning on burning the house down.
Right.
That is his intention.
So you would have thought he would have done that quicker.
Yep. As he stole the family truck, though, to go get the gas cans, the truck stalled out. So he had to abandon it in a parking lot.
Okay.
All right.
It's karma,
So,
like a small little bit.
A little bit. So, and what happens is that Matthew Hoffman chained Sarah up in a crawl space for about 3 days. This crawl space was also covered in leaves. It was cold. It was dark. It was wet. It was gross. I don't think that I have to go into detail about the fact that we know exactly why he was keeping her alive in there.
Okay.
There was extensive sexual assault. He fed her rotten food. He fashioned a diaper out of trash bags that he taped to her body and would not let her shower or clean herself.
All
okay.
Right.
Now, let's talk about, because I said it was only, not only, because that 3 days felt like an eternity to her, I'm sure. But it was 3 days that she was chained there. Let me talk about how he becomes a suspect.
Okay.
This happens after police find Matthew Hoffman sitting in his own car right next to the abandoned Tina's abandoned truck, the family truck that he went back and stole that stalled out in a parking lot.
Fucking weird.
He's
can't
sitting
stay
next
away
to it. He's in his own Yaris, which just sounds like such a
pussy car. Sorry if you own a Yaris.
Sorry if you own a Yaris, but it's just like the dumbest name for it.
He never was able to burn the place down then.
No, he was never able to because the gas cans were in the truck, it stalled out, and I think he intended on it. Like, I think that's why he was found there.
But this is days later?
This is 3 days later.
So at some point in time, the boyfriend has had to have come home.
Oh, yes. And all of those things, the reported missing, she's kidnapped. Yes. All of that stuff happens. But how he becomes a suspect, remember, they have no bodies.
No.
They know that they're assuming Sarah is murdered.
Right.
Too.
Because I'm assuming there's blood everywhere in the bathtub and
so they
the
know
house from the stabbings.
Yep. They know, the police know that nefarious things have taken place because Greg has reported all of them missing. Stephanie's reported missing, all of that, but they don't know where to start. And then he gets himself on as a prime suspect because they find...
He parks next to the car.
Yeah. They find the family truck abandoned in this parking lot and happen to find this dumbass in his Yaris sitting right next to it. So they're questioning him, like, roll down the window, like, hey, what you doing here, buddy? And he's like, oh, I'm just waiting for my girlfriend to get out of work. Like, oh, really? What's your girlfriend's name? He's like, oh, well, we just started dating, so I actually don't know her last name. But her first name is Sarah.
No.
Yes. So he's identifying the victim, the 13-year-old little girl who is chained up amongst leaves in his crawl space to the police, who they know is missing, by the way.
As his girlfriend.
So it doesn't take a lot of strong investigatory work here, right? For police to be like, interesting, you're sitting right next to the abandoned family truck of the family that's missing,
So
and
far,
you're saying your girlfriend's name is Sarah.
This is going to go just like the interrogation on his arson case.
Right. So they go ahead and start looking into Matthew Hoffman. And it does not take them long. The SWAT team gets involved, and they decide we're going to make a move on his home. Okay. That's where we're going to start. The first SWAT officer in line that bursts through the front door of the home, as a second one also tossed in a flash grenade to surprise and disorient him while he was sleeping inside, by the way, was Craig Feeney and his partner. Okay? And I have a quote from him. He said, "We plowed our way through the smoke and saw something on the couch. We yanked him to the floor and said, and he said, 'What's going on?' I said, 'You tell me.' But he was done talking. Even though that initial rush through the door only took some seconds, something besides Hoffman immediately caught Feeney's eye." I almost called him Mr. Feeney, which reminded me of Boy Meets World.
Yes.
The floor of the room to the right of the front door was covered with leaves. Okay. So like immediately, like they're focusing on Matthew Hoffman, but then also they're looking around going,
I'm in a tree.
What the fuck? What is happening? He's like, so much runs through your mind. What if somebody is hiding under that pile? Or in this case, I thought, is that where he's hiding the bodies? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I can see there are piles and piles of leaves, by the way, throughout this house. I can absolutely see how they were probably horrified to look through them in fear that they would find bodies.
Agreed.
So they already know that he has killed 32-year-old Tina Herman, her 11-year-old son, Cody Maynard, and her best friend and neighbor, 41-year-old Stephanie Sprague, okay, on November 10th. So what they really didn't know is they're looking for Sarah, but they're thinking that they're looking for a body. They assume, And what's weird about this crime scene, you guys, is think about it. Picture yourself walking amongst an entire house with piles of leaves, not knowing where it's safe to step, not knowing what's under any of that. Could a grenade be under it? Could a bomb? Anything.
Tripwires.
All the evidence of the bodies, the things that you need to be able to put this man away.
I'd come in with a leaf blower.
Right.
Just how my brain works.
They didn't.
Like the old West, like, I'm here, motherfuckers, with the riots. Blow those leaves around. I'm going to fuck up your decor. It'll never be the same.
It will not. This tree house will never be the same. Now, they didn't want to disturb any potential evidence, but they had to see what they were dealing with. So they actually poked at the piles with sticks.
Yeah, that
leaf
makes
blower,
sense.
Way better idea. Where was Megan? Where were you?
I was probably in law school or college. No, law school. I would have been in law school.
He also was quoted saying, this is Mr. Feeney, was quoted saying, "I've seen a lot of crazy cases, but this guy, wow. He had a 14 by 14 tarp in his living room that was piled 3 feet high with leaves. But the leaves were just the beginning of what awaited them. The detectives also found floor-to-ceiling rows of bags of leaves hanging on the living room wall. He took the time to bag them to then hang them in rows."
Oh, he bagged them outside and brought them in and hung them up like a picture on the wall.
Yes. They found a bathroom that was completely insulated by more than 110 bags of leaves attached to the walls. The bags covered the mirror. They surrounded the toilet.
He liked squeezing his ass on there to take a shit. While he's like,
is this insulation or was this an
fetishy.
Actual fetish?
I think it's fetishy.
Mm-hmm. So they didn't really buy. So, okay. Investigators did a good job. They're kind of like, what are we doing here? He didn't want to talk at first. They do discover Sarah. Okay.
Thank God.
Yes. So they discover Sarah. And, when I say that she's relatively okay, I think you guys know that goes without saying. She's not.
She's alive.
She is alive. She is a survivor. She is placed with her father, of course.
How awful.
We have all that, but just remember that she saw her brother be murdered. She's aware that her mom is murdered. She then learns that, everything else that had taken place. She was horrifically sexually assaulted. Something that she also speaks out about is, he tried to tell the police, and he still maintains this, that he treated her well and that he played video games with her, that he fed her, that they were just like two buddies hanging out. And she's like, absolutely not. No. I was given rotten food. I was not allowed to clean myself up. I wasn't allowed to shower.
He attached a diaper to me. He put me in a crawl space. Yes. He bound and gagged me, and he raped me. Yeah. So, no, I was not treated well.
Right. But that is something he actually even puts in his written confession that he ends up making.
Wow.
Of how well he treated her. As if that makes him just a stand-up
Somehow
guy.
This is mitigating.
Mm-hmm. So, inside the home, besides the evidence of finding Sarah, investigators also found receipts that showed that he had bought a pair of Sure gloves, that he, all of the things he bought, duct tape, knives. Like, he did not enter this home. In his confession, Megan, he wrote that he entered this home with the intention to rob the place. And so what they have to do is disprove that, right? Because yes, he's confessing. He did confess to murdering them, by the way. But what he's confessed, it's that premeditation piece of just, I was interrupted robbing the place and murdered. I didn't premeditate the murder. And they are going in getting this evidence murder, saying, yes, you did.
Felony murder is going to be similar to any type of first degree premeditated. I guess it depends on the state. I'll be honest. It may be different, maybe in terms of whether or not. Mm-hmm. So is it a death penalty state? Those type of things.
Right.
So that does come into play.
But the police did a damn good job of collecting evidence to show how this was premeditated.
Of course it was.
You bought the gloves, you bought the knives, you took that stuff into the home that you're saying your only intention was to rob it, but you waited, right? You had plenty of time to rob it. You waited, and then you murdered, and you dismembered, and hid the bodies.
And took one with you.
Exactly. And kidnapped, and I mean, how many extra charges are there, for that? And can you imagine the amount of work that went into processing this crime scene?
I can. I do. Yeah. I know exactly what work was put into it.
There were a lot of discoveries throughout the home. According to the detective's notes, reports, and photographs in the complete case file, which the Knox County Prosecutor's Office released, actually, in a response to a public records request, the freezer in the kitchen held 2 unskinned squirrels and red popsicles, and that's it.
Well, it was dinner.
He just had red popsicles and squirrels.
This is not shocking to me. This guy's crazy.
Some walls and door jambs were covered with doodles, the kind that a teenage girl would perhaps scratch on a notebook cover. Not done by Sarah.
Right.
Just so you know. There was a giant peace sign on the door. There were stars on the wall, random names written in marker. The leaf-filled bathroom had black doodles scrawled on the white tub, including a jack-o'-lantern. Records show that before the murders, Matthew Hoffman's life was a mess. He had no real job. He was working, for a tree trimming company, but...
Or he was the company.
Right, but he didn't have this stable money. He was collecting unemployment. His car was being repossessed.
Someone wanted it?
Oh, well, he wasn't paying for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the bank wanted it back to sell it for auction. Yeah. He had a girlfriend.
He did.
That actually had lived with him.
With the leaves?
I'm guessing the leaves weren't there when she was there.
I would hope not.
Because this happened November 10th. Well, on October 24th, just before all of this, they broke up and she filed a restraining order because he had choked her.
Okay.
She had a young son as well, and they had moved out at that point in time. So I actually feel like that was probably, he was in a psychotic break at that point in time and then spent all that time putting leaves in his home and doing all of this. Mm-hmm. So the morning of his arrest, he really didn't say anything, but in the videos of the first like interviews, and they interviewed him for a really long time, he had kind of like motioned. He wouldn't talk, but he was doing like these games where he would just like motion, and he was motioning that he was heartbroken. And so the detective's like, this was Detective Roger Brown. He's like, playing charades with this asshole. So he's like, I'm sorry, does that mean heartbroken? And he shakes his head yes. And there's like, because of what? And he shook his head no. And he's like, someone broke your heart? He didn't answer. And so then, and they just sat like that for a long time trying to figure out.
Adult male.
Yes, kind of. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So in this meantime, they are searching for the bodies of Stephanie, of Tina, and of Cody, because they still hadn't been seen since November 10th. On November 16th, Hoffman decides to open up to Special Agent Joe Diaz of the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation.
So he's no longer a mute leaf mime.
Correct. Correct. Apparently not.
Oh, okay.
Took a few days, but he goes ahead off camera, and actually he starts talking in the restroom. We've had cases like this before. Sure. A detective takes a guy to the restroom, and all of a sudden he wants to talk.
There's no cameras in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Hoffman asked.
Hopefully.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, there's not supposed to be. Hoffman asked Diaz if he was recording what he said. The agent said no. So Hoffman said that he had had a nightmare the night before. It was his second night in the jail cell where he was on suicide watch. And Matthew Hoffman said that he dreamed that he was at a food processing plant, and he opened a trash bag filled with dismembered body parts. So he decided he wanted to tell the detectives what had happened. He told the agent, but on his own terms, that he would write down the locations of the bodies for a lawyer. So then Hoffman would...
We're going to give you a lawyer.
Oh, well, of course he has a lawyer.
Oh, yes. He means he'll write him down for a lawyer.
Correct.
Like he'll give him to a defense attorney.
He then told the agent, listen, after I do this and I write this down for the lawyer, I'm going to escape, and I want you to shoot and kill me.
Suicide by cop.
Right. And only after I'm dead can you give the letter to the lawyers to show where the bodies are. So in other words, he just wanted to control
the situation
everything and not go to prison, right? He said that he could not live with what he had done, and that if this could be agreed to, then he would kill himself in jail or make sure that he is killed in jail, and that he did not want to be injected with thorazine, which is a drug used to treat schizophrenia, the rest of his life in prison, and just wanted to end his life. He called himself a monster. Now, obviously, you know the special agent can't go along with this plan, right?
No. That's not usually something you can agree to.
No.
But you can pretend.
And when Matthew realized that this wasn't going to come to fruition, he then said that he made the whole thing up. He made the story up. He doesn't know where the bodies are. But 2 days later...
It's brilliant, Matthew.
Yes, we're just doing this cat and mouse game at this point in time. 2 days later, he decides, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to tell you what happened. And he points the directions to a 60-foot tall hollow tree in the Kokosing Wildlife Area near Fredericktown. He agreed to dictate a detailed confession to his attorneys and to plead guilty on all 10 felony counts that prosecutors would bring against him. Prosecutors took the death penalty off the table in order to be able to find
I knew it
the
was
bodies.
there somewhere.
Yes. Yep. On January 6th, he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. In his confession, also released that same week as after, he was sentenced, he says that he panicked when the women and children surprised him during the burglary. He said
he was sitting, relaxing.
He said that he had just wanted to return and burn the house down after he robbed it. I mean, they accepted that. They took the death penalty off the table to locate the bodies, and they did. Just so you know, they located all of the bodies.
Did he drop them into the hollowed out tree?
He
the
sure
garbage
did.
bags with
He
the body
sure did.
parts?
Which tells me, Megan, that he knew where the hollowed out tree was.
Of course he did.
Because
where all the good trees were.
This wasn't close. Frederickstown, this wasn't like a mile down the road from where the house was.
He had it planned, and he knew where to dispose of evidence.
Did. And honestly, I am glad that he did give this up. I am glad that they made this deal, that they took death penalty.
I don't know that they
off
ever
the
would have
table.
found those.
Exactly. That's exactly why. I'm glad that they took that they had this negotiation piece, as much as maybe people really would want him to have been sentenced to death, which in my opinion is it's an easier way out than living in prison the rest of your life, right? But they wouldn't have found those bodies. We are talking a 60-foot tall hollowed tree in a wildlife area.
I thought he wanted the death penalty.
At first, he claimed he did. What? And wouldn't you? Wouldn't you then sitting and rotting in prison?
I would have to weigh this carefully and heavily.
It's just and knowing the brutality of what he did and that he murdered a child.
Well, he said he couldn't live with it.
And a dog.
Yeah.
And I know that the dog shouldn't hold more weight than the adult humans.
It doesn't, but it does. There
are some people that it absolutely would.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, animal cruelty causing death just carries a little bit more, a less significant penalty. So
there were some other pieces that I haven't told you so far about Sarah's rescue that I'll tell you that kind of upset me when I read them. So I know for the general public it's going to as well, but I think that it deserves some explanation.
Please.
When they discovered her locked up in the crawl space, they didn't untie her until they took pictures for evidence. And I know that that is hard to hear, but
not for me.
Not for you. Exactly. When you have to be able to collect evidence intelligently to be able to bring justice for this person and for the other people that they have harmed, this is a necessary step. And I am sure that they did it with great care and as quickly as possible.
We've had cases like this. Maybe it was like with one of our boy in the box cases where, you know, they took photographs down into where he was found before they removed him. You kind of have to, because as soon as you free the individual from their entrapment, you're destroying your own evidence, things that you'll need. So the photography piece, while I know it bothers a lot of people, imminent risk of death would be a different situation.
Absolutely.
You know, if they would have found her, you know, over lava hanging from a sack with a, you know, then they're going to save you first, just
and
as a horrible,
evidence.
terrible example. But it doesn't shock me or really upset me that much. Although I understand for those of you that are.
Yes.
I'm not going to criticize law enforcement for it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And, you know, if it was necessary or needed to criticize law enforcement, I would.
Right. But I agree. This is a normal process for collecting evidence. And like you said, because she wasn't on the brink of death. Traumatized, absolutely. And I want to speak to that traumatization because I saw in several reports where people were giving her accolades for how strong she is because when she was freed, the first thing that she asked the police was to take her to school so that she wouldn't miss her tests and studies that she had. And people are like, see, that's the type of child she was.
That's a trauma response.
Thank you. I was like, no, guys.
That's not a good thing.
You're missing this. You're missing. Yes, she is a strong
That's 100%
girl.
Denial.
It is.
And wanting things to be normal.
Uh-huh.
And it's not normal.
No.
And it's just such a trauma response. I actually hope that they didn't.
Oh, no, they didn't. They didn't. But it's just the articles that were written by journalists, you know, I was like, you know, they were just like, oh, see, she's such a strong, resilient girl.
Well, she is.
Absolutely. But not because she asked to go to school. Like you said, that is the trauma response. And I was like, guys, you missed the whole point. You missed what that statement really indicated. Because that is
a truly significant adverse childhood experience. And she obviously had strong, loving role models so that she was able to pull from that resiliency piece even immediately to make things feel and seem normal for her. But in terms of people who've been survivors who've been victimized, like she clearly was, it's not always the healthiest of responses because it just indicates that significant denial.
Yes.
And she's grieving, you guys. She's going through all the stages of grief, too, not only for what happened to her, but for the loss of the people that she loved who were horribly murdered.
Right. Remember in part 1, I told you how close her and her brother were, and she watched him get stabbed in the back of the head Okay. I don't know if she had any knowledge at that point in time that her mother was also murdered, but I'm sure that she could have,
It's a good assumption.
right. Have
And as
known.
she's bound and gagged and tied up in her room waiting for this
Yes.
homicidal maniac to finish dismembering her brother now in the bathtub, bagging them all up and then putting her in the car with the bagged body parts.
Right. And did he tell her
Fuck,
that's what
man.
was in it? I don't know.
I think you could assume,
Yeah.
you know, there's a distinct smell, even at 13 years of age. You're laying next to a bag where you almost I can sensory wise feel like the arm in
Of
the bag,
course.
right? Or
Of
you're
course.
reaching, just trying to feel your way around. It makes me feel sick. I'm so sad for her.
Me too. And I am assuming that to make sure that she doesn't try to run, I would imagine he probably told her exactly who he had already killed and done that too, of if you try to run, if you scream, this will
Yes.
be you too.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we have lots of trauma here. She did say, you know, I think in his letter, he tried to make people think certain things so that he would feel good about himself.
Like how well he treated her.
Yes. He told, you know, he put in his letter that he fed me and stuff, read me books. He's like, she said he didn't do any of that stuff. He didn't let me shower, didn't let me use the
run
bathroom,
food.
nothing. Right.
Oh, he was romanticizing it.
He was. Oh, yes, because they were in a relationship in his mind.
Right.
During his trial, Sarah had actually requested that she would like to make a statement to him in court.
Love her. Love that.
Now, for whatever reason, she was advised not to. And I don't know I actually wonder if that is because of the knowledge that they had about the way that he felt they were in a relationship. And so it would have just given him more enjoyment to have heard from her. But what she wanted to do was tell him I'm not scared of him and that I was going to go on and live my life.
Okay.
All right. But she didn't get to speak that piece. And I think that there just might be some more information there about how he would have enjoyed it, and the court didn't want
I'm sure
any of that.
I'm sure that happens with plenty of perpetrators listening to victims, survivors give statements at their sentencings.
Yep.
And families thereof. It's a risky run.
Would you like me to read you the confession?
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
I have it because it was released to the public. He said, I parked my car in Howard and walked from there to the house. I got to the woods across the street from the house a little after midnight. I slept across the street from the house that night in a sleeping bag. I woke up at daylight. There were 2 vehicles parked at the house during the night. I saw that the gray car had left. I went back to sleep around 9 on Wednesday morning. I stayed there until a woman left in a pickup truck. This meant that there were no vehicles at the house. I walked across the street and tried to enter the front door, but it was locked. I then went in through the garage door. The garage door was not closed all the way, so I slid under it into the garage. I kicked the door into the house from the garage. By this time, it was approximately 10:30 a.m. Wednesday morning. I looked around the house to make sure no one was there. Even if I did not take anything, there was a certain amount of excitement in being in someone else's home without them being there. I was looking for anything of value that could be carried out easily, like money, jewelry, etc. I did not find anything of any real value. I was getting ready to leave as I had been there approximately an hour, but someone pulled into the driveway. I was back in the bedrooms when she entered the house and was unable to exit without breaking a window or trying to jump out. Apparently he doesn't know how to open a fucking window.
Or hide under a bed.
Okay. I had brought my knife for a certain amount of intimidation in case I ran into someone and needed to make an escape. When she made her way back into the bedrooms, I confronted her and made her get onto the bed lying face down. I believe that we were in her bedroom. I had a blackjack. I was going to try to knock her out. I hit her a couple of times in the head, but this would not knock her out. It was not doing the job, and I started panicking. The next thing I knew, her friend came into the bedroom. I had no idea when she got there, what she was doing there, and how she gained access. The other woman yelled at me. There were now 2 to deal with, and I did not know what to do. I grabbed the knife that I had put down on the nightstand and stabbed the woman on the bed through her back twice. I chased the other woman down, Stephanie, and stabbed her a couple of times in the chest. Instead of running out of the house, she ran into another bedroom. I believe this bedroom was for a girl due to the contents of the room. I then went back to the other bedroom where the first woman was located and stabbed her a couple more times. I could tell that both women were dead now. At this time, I was in a total state of shock. I wandered around the house slowly, coming to the realization of what I had done and how bad it was. During this time, I killed the dog because it wouldn't stop barking. After I came to the conclusion that I was going to dispose of the bodies and burn the house down, at first I thought about loading the bodies into a vehicle and driving it into Foundation Park Pond. I would swim away as the vehicle sank, but I felt that it was too cold and I might not be able to make it out of the water. Oh, he's worrying about his own safety here.
Yeah, self-preservation.
I decided to process the bodies and dispose of them inside.
Did you hear what he just said?
Yes, I'm glad you picked up on
Process.
that. Mm-hmm.
Not
just
dismember,
like you would
not cut up,
an
process.
animal. That's what we call when we
Deer
kill deer.
processing.
Mm-hmm. So he said, I decided to process the bodies and dispose of them inside of a tree that I knew was hollow. I took the bodies into the bathroom and began processing the bodies to dispose of them. I used garbage bags from within the house and placed the bodies inside. Once I had finished processing the bodies, I moved the Jeep into the garage to load up the bodies. I still had a couple of bags to load into the Jeep when I heard the children come into the house. I confronted the children, and the girl instantly ran to a bedroom. I stabbed the boy in the chest a couple of times. I ran into the bedroom after the girl to make sure she was not on the phone for help. And I saw the girl was not on the phone, and I could not bring myself to kill her. I did not enter the house to kill those people. I did not know a single one of them. That's actually not true. I did not know their names, and I did not know who all lived in the house. He actually wrote in his statement the name Stephanie, by the way. I chose
he knew her.
I chose the house to break into there because there was not any close neighbors, and I noticed the garage door was ajar. I chose the house the day before. I did not plan any of this to happen. I did not want to kill anyone, and I just tried to knock the first woman out so that I would be able to escape. This was not working. A second woman showed up, and things quickly spiraled out of control. They kept escalating, and I was panicking. I only chose to process the bodies to make their disposal easier. So in January 2011, Matthew Hoffman pleaded guilty to 10 counts and was sentenced to life without parole.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Charnell.
Isn't that a fucking bizarre case?
He's bizarre. You know, I would love to have some insight into his psychological makeup, which, you know, perhaps since he's serving time right now, there's some work being done with him. But not that I give a fuck or think that there's anything mitigating, and he's right where he belongs. But I'm interested in the tree and the leaf fetish and how that came about and when that started.
Me too, because he didn't have the type of childhood that we typically talk about for this type of escalation.
Even with a divorce being traumatizing, that's just some weird shit. If your kids start bringing in any bags of leaves to put on the wall, Charnell, you should get them help.
Well, I guess so.
Right.
I mean, if it's more than for a leaf project.
I mean, wow.
All right.
Are you going to bathe me?
I'm going to bathe you.
Okay.
I'm going to bathe. Well, listen.
Are you going to bathe me in leaves? I don't want to.
I'm not. But is it a bath? I don't know. You're going to feel dirtier, I think.
Sometimes I like that.
I'm also going to throw this in here because it's from November 13th, 2023.
So this is just less than 2 months ago.
I haven't been able to verify that it's not satire.
I love a questionable brain bath.
Yes.
Is it satire? Is it real? You guys be the judge.
And I don't have, I'm trying to click on the whole link because this was sent to us by a listener, and I'm trying to pull up the actual, I don't know.
Phones hate us sometimes.
Well, let's see. I'm going to read for you the title, and then we'll see if we can find an actual article, because I thought this was the actual article.
Okay.
It's just her mugshot in the title that says, Morgue worker stole human testicles from corpses to help her win homemade spaghetti sauce contest. I told you wouldn't feel cleaner after this, but I want you to see her mugshot.
Oh, God, that's a testicle eater.
It is. This is Mrs. Trunchbull from Matilda.
I found a Snopes article.
Okay.
Hold on.
Tell me it's not real, because this could be terrible.
It is a satirical article, had the headline, Morgue Assistant Uses Testicles. So an online article reported that an Illinois morgue assistant named Linda Anders made use of an unusual secret ingredient in a local cooking competition. that she specifically used testicles from corpses to help win an annual spaghetti cook-off. In late July of 2022, readers sent in quite a few messages that asked us to find out if a grisly-sounding article was true. It was published on July 27th of 22 on kvta4.com with the headline, "Morgue Assistant Uses Testicles from Corpses to Help Win Annual Spaghetti Cook-Off." It named the supposed Illinois morgue assistant as the 41-year-old Linda Anders. Despite the somewhat official-looking local news field that kvta4.com might appear to have, the truth is that the website bears a satire disclaimer. Part of the spaghetti cook-off story read as follows. Linda Anders, 41, has been a participant in Carterville's annual spaghetti cook-off for the last 12 years. In those dozen years, the highest she had placed was second, and Linda knew second is the first loser. For 2022 and lucky contest number 13, Linda used a secret ingredient that she was sure would give her that extra edge and earn herself the blue ribbon she so desired. Anders worked as a morgue assistant for the County Williamson. For the 11 months leading up to the cook-off, Linda collected the testes from deceased adult males. She would slice them, dice them, and sew them up without attracting attention. And who was going to miss the missing balls of dead men anyway?
I mean, they're not using them anymore.
In this satirical story, the morgue assistant was eventually arrested after a judge tasting the spaghetti realized he was chewing on a prosthetic testicle. On kvta4.com's About Us page, it shows the following disclaimer that describes the output as satire. KVTA4 is a fabricated satirical newspaper and comedy website. It uses invented names in all its stories, except in cases when public figures are being satirized. Any other use of real names is accidental and coincidental.
I love it.
On August 1st, the article from kvta4.com was reported on by The Wayne D Show on Buckeye Country 94.3 on iHeart.com. So this is how wildfire spreads.
I see.
What this morgue assistant put in her spaghetti will make you vomit, the article read, but it did not mention that the story was satirical.
Oh, no.
It's unclear where the mugshot of the woman came from.
I was going to ask that
used.
too. This poor woman, Mrs. Trunchbull.
Somewhere out there, she's like, I did not.
She probably did something way worse.
Oh, right. Like took her husband's out of the sack while he was still alive.
Right.
However, these kinds of satirical articles about morgues usually repurpose real life mugshots for their fictional tales. It's likely that the mugshot was real, but the person pictured had nothing to do with a morgue assistant, testicles from corpses, or spaghetti.
Hence the problem with posting pictures online, because you just never know where they could end up.
And thank you, Jordan Lyles, senior reporter for Snopes since 2016, for verifying that this did in fact not occur.
Yep.
And also, this is why I don't taste food at cook-offs.
Oh, and I don't like potlucks.
We've had this conversation before.
Don't like
family potlucks, I am okay with.
Ironically, if you brought spaghetti and meatballs to my house and said, this is made with male testicles, I would say...
You'd try it.
I would.
Because I'm a good
I bet
cook.
you can season it beautifully.
I really could.
Yeah, it wouldn't
And we all
me.
know you probably would have assisted me in...
Yeah, disposing of.
Well, procuring the ingredient to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Charnell, let's have some testicles tonight. And you're like, how are we prepping them? Raw, straight from the source.
All organic.
All organic. Oh, shit. We need to leave these people now.
We do. It is time. Thank you all so much for listening. And we hope that you come back next week. And
please
keep it curious.
Keep listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.